10 things I quit in my 65S that made me happier in my 80s. As I look back from the vantage point of my 80s, I can see clearly the changes I made in my 65S that brought real joy, peace, and meaning to these later years. Life at this age doesn't have to be about limitations. In fact, I feel more liberated, focused, and truly alive than ever before. Here are 10 things I consciously decided to leave behind in my 65S that have made my life immeasurably richer in my 80s. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. 1. Worrying about aging. As I entered my 60s, I carried a lingering fear of aging. I worried about losing my independence, my health, and, frankly, my sense of purpose. Aging felt like a slow descent into irrelevance, a time when I might no longer contribute meaningfully to the world around me. But as I approached my mid-60s, I made a conscious decision to change my mindset about what growing older could mean. I stopped treating aging as something to dread and started seeing it as an opportunity, a new chapter filled with potential. Letting go of my worries about aging wasn't an overnight process. It was a gradual shift. I started by focusing on what I could control: my health, my relationships, my daily choices. I began to recognize that each year brought with it a deeper sense of self and a stronger connection to what mattered most. Instead of looking at what I was losing, I began appreciating what I was gaining: wisdom, resilience, and a lifetime of experiences that had shaped me into someone unique. This change allowed me to open my heart to the possibilities of these later years. I realized that aging isn't a countdown, it's a progression, a gift of time. Rather than fearing the physical changes that come with age, I now accept them as part of life's natural rhythm. My body has taken me through decades of joy, struggle, laughter, and growth. It deserves my gratitude, not my disappointment. Each line, each ache reminds me of a life well lived and urges me to live fully in each day I'm given. With this new outlook, I started taking on activities I might have avoided before. I reconnected with hobbies that I had put aside, built relationships with the younger generations, and even explored new interests. I found that I had become more present and engaged because I was no longer worried about what the future held. I could savor the here and now without the weight of fear hanging over me. Letting go of my anxieties about aging was transformative. In choosing to focus on growth rather than decline, I unlocked a deeper joy and contentment. Instead of feeling diminished, I now feel whole, rooted in the present, grateful for the past, and open to whatever the future may bring. Aging is a journey, and by releasing my fear, I've allowed myself to truly embrace every part of it. 2. Criticizing myself. For much of my life, I was my own harshest critic. I held myself to impossible standards, constantly replaying moments where I thought I'd fallen short or made mistakes. There were sleepless nights spent going over words I wished I could take back, decisions I wished I'd made differently, and even times I berated myself for not achieving goals as quickly or perfectly as I'd planned. But in my 60s, I came to understand a profound truth. Self-criticism was a habit that weighed me down, diminishing my capacity for joy, growth, and compassion. I began to ask myself, what would it be like if I treated myself with the same kindness I offered to others? When a friend made a mistake, I wouldn't dream of dwelling on it or reminding them of their flaws. I would listen, offer support, and encourage them to keep going. Realizing I could extend this same empathy to myself was liberating. Slowly, I let go of the harsh internal dialogue and started embracing a more forgiving view of my life and choices. This journey of self-compassion required me to accept that mistakes were not failures, but stepping stones in my journey. Each so-called misstep was a learning experience that had brought me wisdom. My decisions, both the good and the questionable, had contributed to who I had become. I began to see myself as a whole person, a mix of triumphs, challenges, and lessons, rather than a list of past shortcomings. As I released the habit of self criticism, I found I had more mental and emotional energy to focus on what truly mattered: enjoying life, nurturing relationships, and exploring new interests without the heavy cloud of self judgment. I discovered that when I stopped picking apart my actions or questioning my worth, I could be fully present in each moment, savoring life with an open heart. In my 80s, I now look back with gratitude on my choice to replace self criticism with self acceptance. I feel a quiet pride in my resilience, my willingness to learn, and my capacity to forgive myself. Letting go of that inner critic allowed me to step into a gentler, more fulfilling chapter of life. Self compassion has become the foundation upon which I continue to grow, not in spite of my past, but because of it. 3. Living by others' opinions. For much of my life, I found myself shaped by the expectations and opinions of others. I wanted to be seen as dependable, liked, and successful, so I often adjusted my choices to fit what I believed others wanted from me. Whether it was career decisions, lifestyle choices, or even hobbies, I allowed myself to be guided by outside voices rather than my own inner compass. But as I reached my 60s, I realized that constantly seeking validation from others was preventing me from living a life that was truly my own. This shift didn't happen easily. For years, I'd carried the habit of second guessing myself, wondering what others might think or say about my choices. But as I aged, I began to see how limiting this was. I realized that no one else had experienced my life, my unique set of challenges, joys, and lessons. Only I truly understood what brought me happiness and fulfillment. It dawned on me that living by others' opinions was like living on borrowed time. It was never really mine. So I began the process of listening to my own voice. At first, it felt unfamiliar and even a bit uncomfortable. I was used to filtering my decisions through the lens of others' expectations. But as I started tuning in to my own needs and desires, I felt a powerful sense of liberation. I could pursue interests and relationships that genuinely resonated with me without worrying if they fit anyone else's idea of what my life should look like. I learned that trusting myself didn't mean disregarding others entirely. It meant recognizing that I had the final say in my own life and that my intuition and experiences were valuable guides. I could still listen to advice and perspectives, but I no longer needed external validation to feel secure in my choices. This newfound independence has become one of the greatest gifts of my later years. Free from the weight of others' opinions, I feel a deeper sense of authenticity and peace. Now, in my 80s, I wake each day with a sense of ownership over my life. I live in alignment with my true self, honoring my journey, my values, and my dreams. Living by my own choices has made these years feel like they truly belong to me, and I wouldn't trade that feeling for anything in the world. 4. Automatically saying yes. For most of my life, I was a yes person. If someone asked for my help, invited me somewhere, or needed something, I would agree without a second thought. Saying yes made me feel valuable, needed, and appreciated. I thought that by always being available, I was strengthening my relationships and fulfilling my responsibilities. But by my mid 60s, I began to feel the weight of my endless yeses. I realized that in my efforts to please everyone else, I'd often neglected my own well being and peace. Learning to say no was a gradual, sometimes uncomfortable journey. It meant redefining what it meant to be generous and supportive. I came to understand that constantly agreeing to things I didn't truly want or have the energy for wasn't benefiting anyone, especially not myself. When I said yes to every request, I was often left feeling depleted, sometimes even resentful. I recognized that my worth wasn't tied to how often I showed up for others, but in how meaningfully I could be present, especially when I took care of my own needs first. Embracing the power of a thoughtful no was transformative. At first, I worried that people might feel disappointed or think less of me. But over time, I noticed that true friends and family respected my boundaries and understood my reasons. Saying no to requests that didn't serve me allowed me to be fully present and engaged in the commitments I genuinely cared about. My relationships improved, and I felt a sense of relief, knowing I was acting from a place of intention rather than obligation. Today, I understand that no is not a rejection of others. It's an affirmation of my values, time, and energy. It has become a way for me to create space for what truly matters, whether it's spending time with loved ones, exploring personal interests, or simply resting. Now, in my 80s, I'm grateful for the freedom that comes with honoring my boundaries. Saying no when I need to has allowed me to say yes to a life filled with purpose, joy, and balance, one that truly reflects who I am and what I cherish most. 5. Over apologizing. Throughout my life, I'm sorry often slipped out of my mouth almost automatically, even when I had done nothing wrong. I would apologize when someone bumped into me, when I disagreed with someone, or when I simply needed to take up space. Apologizing had become a reflex, a way of smoothing things over, avoiding conflict, or perhaps seeking acceptance. But as I entered my 60s, I started to question why I was so quick to diminish myself in this way. I realized that my constant apologizing was not only unnecessary, but was also quietly eroding my self worth. Learning to let go of over apologizing required me to reframe my understanding of respect and empathy. I came to see that respecting others didn't mean sacrificing my own confidence or sense of self. I didn't need to apologize for existing, for having opinions, or for setting boundaries. Every time I apologized needlessly, I was in a way asking for permission to be myself, and I recognized that I didn't need anyone's permission to simply be who I am. Gradually, I started replacing unnecessary apologies with expressions of gratitude or understanding. Instead of saying, I'm sorry for being late, I began to say, thank you for your patience. Instead of apologizing for having a different perspective, I learned to simply express my views with confidence and respect. This shift helped me reclaim my voice and my presence, reminding me that I deserved to take up space and be heard. In my 80s, I feel stronger, knowing that my words and actions are rooted in authenticity rather than apology. I still apologize when I truly feel it's warranted, when I've hurt someone or made a mistake, but I no longer feel the need to apologize just for being myself. Letting go of over apologizing has been liberating, allowing me to live with a quiet confidence and a sense of self respect that I had spent too many years suppressing. Today, I move through life unapologetically, embracing who I am and honoring my right to be here. 6. Rushing through life. For decades, I lived life at a whirlwind pace, moving from one task to the next, always feeling like I had to be somewhere, do something, or keep up with others' expectations. My days were often filled with back to back commitments, errands, and endless to do lists, leaving little time to simply be. I believed that productivity defined my worth, and I felt a strange pride in being perpetually busy. But by my mid 60s, I began to feel the toll of this constant rush. Life was slipping by, yet I rarely paused to appreciate it. Slowing down wasn't an easy change to make. It took intention and practice. I realized that rushing had become a habit, a way of avoiding the present moment by always focusing on what came next. But as I began to consciously slow down, I discovered a richness in life that I had been missing. I started to linger over my morning coffee, taking in the quiet peace of the early hours. I allowed myself to fully engage in conversations without the nagging sense that I should be somewhere else. I began to notice the world around me, the colors of the changing seasons, the laughter of children, the beauty in small, ordinary moments. Choosing a slower pace transformed my relationships as well. I found that when I stopped rushing, I could give my loved ones my full attention, truly listening and connecting in ways I hadn't before. I became more present, both to myself and to others, and that presence enriched every aspect of my life. I learned that productivity is not the same as fulfillment, and that true joy often resides in those quiet, unhurried moments. Now, in my 80s, I'm grateful for the peace that comes from embracing a slower, more intentional way of living. Life no longer feels like a race, it feels like a journey, one I can savor and experience fully. Letting go of the need to rush has allowed me to rediscover the beauty of each day, and I find profound joy in simply being present. This slower rhythm has become a gift, a way to truly cherish the time I have, and a reminder that the best parts of life are often found when we take the time to notice them. 7. Watching the news constantly. For years, I thought staying informed meant constantly checking the news, watching every broadcast, and scrolling through headlines multiple times a day. There was always something happening in the world, and I felt a sense of responsibility to stay updated, as if knowing every detail would somehow make a difference. But as I reached my 60s, I started to feel the emotional toll. The constant flood of negative stories, tragedies, and conflicts weighed heavily on me, creating a persistent undercurrent of anxiety. I began to wonder, was my need to be in the know actually serving me, or was it simply draining my peace? Deciding to limit my news intake was a significant shift, one that required me to redefine what staying informed truly meant. I realized that I didn't need to follow every headline or absorb every tragedy to understand the world. Instead, I could choose intentional moments to check the news, allowing myself to stay aware without being overwhelmed. This change meant giving myself permission to tune out of the endless cycle of updates and focus on what was within my control, my actions, my relationships, and my local community. In freeing myself from constant news consumption, I found mental and emotional clarity. I replaced that time with activities that nourished me: reading, engaging in hobbies, connecting with friends, or simply enjoying the quiet moments of the day. I still stay informed, but now I approach the news with a healthier perspective, recognizing that I don't have to bear the weight of every story on my shoulders. I choose sources that provide balanced perspectives and avoid sensationalism, allowing me to stay connected to the world without losing myself in it. Now, in my 80s, I feel a deep sense of peace. I am aware of what's happening in the world, but I no longer feel consumed by it. This balance has given me more space to appreciate the beauty and goodness in life, to focus on the positive, and to invest in what truly matters. Limiting my news intake has been a profound act of self-care, reminding me that while I care deeply for the world, I must also protect my own well-being. This shift has allowed me to approach each day with a clearer mind and a lighter heart. 8. Buying things I don't need. For a long time, I found comfort in buying things: new clothes, gadgets, or items for the home. I'd tell myself that each purchase would bring me joy or add something meaningful to my life. But as the years went by, I noticed that these things often ended up forgotten, gathering dust or cluttering my space. By the time I reached my 60s, I began to feel the weight of all these unnecessary belongings. I realized that what I truly needed couldn't be bought, and that accumulating more things wasn't filling the deeper spaces in my heart. So, I began to shift my perspective on what I brought into my life. I started asking myself if each item truly served a purpose or added genuine value. I thought deeply about what I wanted my surroundings to reflect: a sense of peace, simplicity, and meaningfulness. Instead of turning to material things to find comfort, I began focusing on experiences, relationships, and activities that enriched my life in ways stuff never could. It was a slow but deliberate process of letting go of the non-essential and embracing a life of intentional simplicity. As I decluttered, I noticed a profound change within myself. My mind felt clearer, my heart felt lighter, and my home became a space that truly brought me peace. I discovered that fewer possessions allowed me to focus on what really mattered: moments spent with loved ones, the joy of pursuing hobbies, and the pleasure of a space that was calm and uncluttered. I found that the less I had, the more grateful I became for what I did have, and this gratitude brought me a deep sense of fulfillment. Now, in my 80s, I see the richness that simplicity has brought into my life. I no longer feel the need to acquire things to feel happy or complete. Instead, I find joy in what's truly valuable: time, health, love, and presence. My life feels lighter, more intentional, and filled with a quiet contentment that I never found in material possessions. Choosing to let go of unnecessary things has opened up space not only in my home, but also in my heart, allowing me to live with a sense of peace and purpose that I cherish each day. 9. Endless scrolling on social media. For years, social media was a comforting escape, a place to connect, stay entertained, and fill quiet moments. But over time, what started as a simple habit grew into hours of endless scrolling, checking updates, reading comments, and falling down rabbit holes of stories, posts, and opinions. By my mid 60s, I began to notice the toll it was taking. Instead of feeling fulfilled, I often felt drained, distracted, or even inadequate, comparing my life to the filtered highlights of others. I realized that this constant online presence was taking me away from the real, tangible moments in front of me. Making the decision to limit my social media use was like breaking a deeply ingrained habit. I had to learn to resist the urge to reach for my phone whenever I felt bored or lonely. At first, it felt unsettling. Those moments of quiet felt empty without the steady stream of updates. But as I leaned into those moments, I started to rediscover the beauty of genuine presence. I became more attentive to the world around me, more engaged in conversations, and more attuned to my own thoughts and feelings. Reducing social media opened up new space in my life. I found time to rekindle hobbies I'd neglected, read books that had been waiting on my shelf, and take walks without feeling the need to document every beautiful sunset. I also noticed my relationships deepening. Instead of following updates on a screen, I reached out more often, spent time with loved ones, and truly listened to their stories. Letting go of the urge to constantly check in online allowed me to fully inhabit my own life rather than just observing it from behind a screen. Now, in my 80s, I feel profoundly grateful for this change. I am more present, more connected to the real people and experiences that bring me joy. I've learned that life's richness isn't found in endless scrolling, but in moments that are experienced fully, without distraction. Stepping away from social media has given me a new appreciation for the here and now, and it has taught me that true connection happens in the real world, in the small, meaningful moments that we choose to be present for. This simple shift has brought a depth of peace and fulfillment that no online platform could ever provide. 10. Wearing uncomfortable clothing. In my younger years, I often chose fashion over comfort, thinking that looking a certain way mattered more than how I felt. I wore tight shoes, restrictive clothes, and items that looked stylish but often left me sore or exhausted by the end of the day. It was as if my clothing was an unspoken declaration, reflecting how I wanted to be perceived by others. But by the time I reached my 60s, I began to question why I was willing to endure discomfort just for appearance's sake. I realized that my time, my energy, and my comfort were worth so much more than others' fleeting opinions of how I looked. Choosing comfort over style was an act of self-respect and acceptance. I began seeking out clothes that allowed me to move freely, breathe easily, and enjoy the day without distraction. Soft fabrics, relaxed fits, and well-made shoes became my go-to choices, and the change wasn't just physical, it was deeply emotional too. Wearing clothes that honored my body rather than restricted, it felt like a powerful acknowledgement of self-worth. It was as if I was telling myself, you deserve to be comfortable, to feel good in your own skin. This shift went beyond just clothing. It reshaped how I saw myself and my priorities. Dressing comfortably helped me embrace authenticity over appearance, aligning with a deeper respect for my own needs and desires. no longer feeling the pressure to dress up according to societal standards, I found a sense of freedom and confidence that I hadn't known before. I could focus more on the joy of each day, free from the constant tugging, adjusting, or discomfort that had once been part of my routine. Now, in my 80s, I am grateful for the simplicity and ease this choice brings. My clothes reflect who I am, not who I think I should be. I can spend my energy on experiences, on laughter, on connection, rather than on appearances. This decision to prioritize comfort has given me a sense of peace and contentment, allowing me to embrace my days with greater ease. By letting go of uncomfortable clothing, I have chosen a life that feels as good as it looks, a life where my well-being comes first, wrapped in the softness and warmth that I truly deserve. Conclusion. Reflecting on the journey of letting go, I see now that each decision was not just about giving up a habit or changing a behavior. It was about choosing myself, my peace, and my joy. In my 60s, I began the process of shedding the unnecessary weights I had carried for so long, the fears, expectations, and habits that no longer served me. Each choice to let go brought me closer to a life of true contentment and authenticity, a life that honors who I am at my core. Now, in my 80s, I live with a clarity and sense of purpose I could have only dreamed of in earlier years. I've come to understand that happiness isn't about adding more, but about making space. Space for presence, for meaningful connections, for simple joys, and for the moments that matter most. By releasing what held me back, I've uncovered a quieter, deeper happiness, one that is rooted in self-acceptance and a profound appreciation for life's gentle, beautiful rhythm. Looking back, I realized that each thing I chose to let go was a step toward embracing the life I truly wanted. Aging has taught me that time is precious and that every moment is a gift. My life now feels richer, not because of what I own or what I've achieved, but because of what I've released. This freedom allows me to be fully present, to experience each day with gratitude, and to savor the simple, extraordinary beauty of being alive. So, to anyone else on this journey, know that it is never too late to choose a lighter, more meaningful path. Letting go is not a loss. It's an opening, an invitation to live with greater peace, joy, and fulfillment. Life has given us the gift of time, and by embracing it with open arms and an open heart, we can find a happiness that only grows richer with age. These lessons are meant to inspire you to live fully and authentically. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Take a moment to reflect and share one thing you've learned and plan to apply in your own life. Let's support each other on this journey towards embracing these truths. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment with 1. If not, feel free to comment with 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and here's to living life on your own terms.